Hey everybody, welcome back to the WBF podcast. We're super excited to be back with you guys. How
Hi.
you doing, Jody?
I'm making it.
You're making it. So, anytime I go a little while without talking to you guys, I get bummed out and in my feelings, so that's pretty cool.
Hmm.
But, you know, every season is a learning season.
Yeah.
And, Jody and I were talking about kind of different directions the podcast could go, and she was giving me some of her advice. And I always want to be open to advice, and sometimes I'm not the best at doing that. So we talked about it, and it's like you look at a crossword or a word search, and you can't find a word on it, and then you look away, and when you look back, there's the word. So she was kind of telling me some ideas about maybe we could talk about more like real life, like what's happening right now kind of stuff.
Hmm.
So we're excited to get into some of that stuff with you guys. And, I've had a heart to tell people stories on here to edify things in the church that need like help, like kids service or
Hmm.
whatever the case may be. But I think even diving into it even more so is needed. So
Yeah.
I'm hoping to have Amy and Travis come on to share their heart behind Faith Kids, Amy's heart behind Faith
Yes.
Kids, and hopefully inspire some others to want to serve in some capacity with our
Hmm.
with our children. It's so important. It's
Yeah.
so needed. Anytime we've been back there and someone was saved, we were a part of that salvation. And anytime you serve in any capacity in our church, you reap some of that reward. So it's just, we're excited. We're really ready. And we're going to tell you guys a little bit about what we've been doing.
Yeah. Yeah. I do think it's super important. There are a lot of places in the church that could use help. It's a big church, right? And sometimes, you see the workers that are there all the time and you begin to rely on them.
Hmm.
You see them and like there's such a beauty in that because it's like with it when it comes to our kids you get like comfortable, right? Like you see those same faces and you're like, I know they are going to take care of my kids. Like
Right.
there is a peace and comfort in that,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time you understand that they're sacrificing, right? They're
Yes.
sacrificing their time, they're sacrificing their ability to get fed. Maybe they've had a hard week and they're still coming in and serving our children. I think it is important for them to have time sometimes where they also get to come into the service and they're getting fed and they're kind of getting back that peace and that refresher so that when they go back in the next time, they're refreshed, they're ready to go headstrong at it with the kids. And I think it is important to highlight that and to understand that there are always going to be needs,
Mm-hmm.
and we each have an important part to play. That it is okay to have like your seasons of like doing life, but there's also a time to serve. There's a time where the Lord blesses you to be a blessing, right? So there's a time to give back. And I think it's important sometimes just to share the needs of what the church is needing so that we can grow as a body, right? So that those people can sometimes get a break. And
Not all giving is financial giving.
that's
Sometimes
right.
giving your time is more important.
Absolutely.
Being obedient is more important than anything.
That's right.
And God says that a couple times, especially in the Old Testament. Samuel says it. And, we were hanging out with Garrett and Leslie, Pastor Garrett and Pastor Leslie, our good friends, and
Yes.
they were telling us because the beautiful thing about our Faith Kids is it's not just going to stop at Faith Kids. They're going to grow into
That's right.
the youth, the teenagers, and so for Amy and Travis and for Garrett and Leslie to be on the same page, like this is our heart to grow into where Garrett
Yes.
is serving back there once a month. They get to see him, they'll feel comfortable with him, so that we can really set a pace for these kids that will be different than what they've ever experienced, because a lot of these
That's
kids
right.
haven't experienced church for very long in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And as we were talking to Garrett and Leslie, we were realizing that there is a need in
Mm-hmm.
the kids. And our kids are back there on a weekly basis, and you just don't
Yes.
even realize. You
Yes.
want people back there consistently. There does need to be some consistency in the leadership. But that doesn't mean that we want to burn them out
That's right.
either. We want them to be filled up with that love to give to our kids. I talked to Terry Peeler about that during her testimony of her passing the torch before she was burned out, well, the fire was still lit. And so it's important for them to get a break. It's important, maybe serving once every other month or whatever the capacity, just getting a bigger pool to give them a relief, I think is something super important. So that's something we're really excited about for sure.
Yes.
So how have the past couple weeks been for you?
They've been good for us. We just got off a station. Recommend. Okay. We took naps.
It's our vibe for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely our vibe. We got to take the boys, out to the splash park and Chuck E. Cheese and stuff. But we also got to come home and, our kids got to take their naps and we got to sleep in our beds. And there's just a comfort and a peace sometimes in being home, but being, giving yourself a true rest, right? Because the world kind of demands that you go. But the word calls us to rest at times. And sometimes you just need that so that you can go back, stronger. That's actually something Leslie and I, we met for coffee one day. And that was something that we really talked a lot about. It was, it's so good. It's so good to have, people that you love in your life who can speak life into you, and we kind of talked about how, we've been in such a season of running and kind of what a season of rest looks like. And that sometimes, it was good to have that reminder. The Lord teaches us so much, and sometimes you kind of need that moment to slow down and soak everything in. Sometimes that moment of rest is really a moment where, the Lord's just packed. And sometimes he's like, now I need you to fully receive. Like slow down, stop, reflect, and receive. And we kind of talked about like how much, because we just kind of needed that refresher, I think, of like how much the Lord has done in our lives so that we could have a moment to really receive. And that sometimes, with the world being so busy, that you think that when you're not going 100 miles an hour, like it's almost like you're underperforming, right? Like maybe I'm not doing enough for the Lord, right? But sometimes, the Lord calls you to rest, and that's okay, and being okay with the fact that if you're not getting something 100% of the time, like it's okay. if you sometimes like, I'm like, if I read my word and I'm like, just feel empty, it's not, it's okay.
Yeah. That's so important to realize that, because we get so anxious, we get so nervous, we get so, what am I doing? Why? But that discipline is the most important discipline that we could have. And that's the enemy trying to, or even just your own flesh, trying to steal that away from you. Because your flesh wants to be lazy and comfortable.
That's right.
But like, I'm telling you, the difference in me putting on worship music while I deliver mail, getting in my word rather than sleeping in, I'm trying to become disciplined, and it's something we're going to talk about more in future podcasts, is physical discipline, spiritual discipline. We're going to dive into all those different topics. But you're so right. It's so important that even when we feel like we're not getting a thing out of the word, it's so important to be putting it in us, because we'll need it. We need it in us. Pastor Jeff was talking about we need the word in our hearts. We need to be able to speak it, even when you don't feel like speaking it. He said something like that, and it really resonated with me. He said stuff like that before, but for me, us having a week off was great. We needed it. But not doing a podcast for 2 weeks left me anxious. And I don't like using words like anxiety and depression. Sometimes they're like trigger words. People overuse them sometimes, but I was dealing with a little bit of anxiety over not having done a podcast. What was I going to do? Just really struggling internally. And we have a busy week this week. And so immediately near the end of the week starts creeping up, and I'm starting to stress like, oh my gosh, I have this thing and this thing and this thing and this thing, and that's 4 things. And Friday or Saturday, it's probably right after we hang out with Pastor Garrett and Pastor Leslie, I was like, okay, I need to take a deep breath. I need to really, really hone in and realize, like, it's okay. Like, take this day by day. don't waste your time with anxiety. Anxiety can almost make you waste more time.
Absolutely.
And make you drive yourself crazy. But you know what I did when I got home today? I played some music. I'm preparing for worship Sunday. We're doing this podcast tonight, something that I know fills me up so much, and I'm so excited to share it with the people. We have other opportunities to pour into the youth coming up, to meet with our life group coming up Friday.
Yes.
So these are opportunities. They're not just anxiety-riddled moments of my life that I have to be fearful of. My social anxiety will be okay. I'll leave it at the door when I get there.
That's right. Yeah, sometimes you pack yourself so busy that all of a sudden it's like sometimes you feel like you're almost like lacking the blessing because you're so stressed about, how busy you packed your week. And it's like, sometimes with it being that busy and, Satan just kind of speaks like, are you going to have time? But it's like, no, it's not even about that. It's just about fellowship and enjoying time. It doesn't have to be this super stressful thing. But sometimes when you're so busy, it feels like it is.
Right.
That's why I think resting is so important, because the Lord doesn't want that for us, right? Like he doesn't call anxiety for us. He doesn't call any of that for us, but we kind of do it to ourselves,
I probably could do with some less me time.
Right.
Like me time looks like me binging TV on the couch.
Right.
And I'm telling you guys, it's okay to watch secular shows. I know we do, but like so much of it is garbage. And like really trying to put those like biblical goggles on, so to speak, and really catch that stuff. And I want to cut some of that out of my life and give it to the Lord. And your flesh doesn't want to do it. It doesn't. And it takes some getting used to. I don't want to get up at 5 a.m. and I've been talking about it on the podcast for like a year now. That's how much I don't want to do it. But I'm going to. And getting up this morning and working out with my brother, doing things like this will promote good things in my life.
That's right.
Because we've talked about it before. If I continue to do the same thing and I'm miserable, I'm just going to be miserable. Nothing's going to change. And so even in taking risks and doing different podcasts and doing things that maybe will push me out of my comfort zone, it's going to be a good thing. I'm so excited for the opportunities. It opens up so many more opportunities to have people like Pastor Jeff come on and talk about mental health. People like Leslie to come on with Jody and talk about physical health. We have so many different options of things that we can talk about that the church might feel like they're missing out on in a Sunday service, so to speak.
Yeah, there's so much growth in going outside of your comfort zone and building that discipline. I think that's been like a thing that we've been working on for growth for us, is just trying to be more disciplined. There's fruit in it. It's always hard in the beginning, but there's so much fruit in it when you can just push past your flesh. And you just push past it. When you can just, because you make the decision. You're making a decision either way, right? You're choosing to do it or you're choosing to not do something, whether that doing it is good or not doing it is good. Whatever, whatever it is, whatever your thing is, right? But in pushing past that, when I started getting back into working out and I started the second workout was the toughest workout. I've been doing it for like 5 weeks. And the second workout was the toughest workout, right? The first one, you're feeling amped up. You're feeling good. And then the second one, you're like, I wanted to do nothing less. I almost could not motivate myself to do it. But I knew that if I could be disciplined enough to do it the first week, I would continue to do it, right? And so sometimes discipline is just like doing that thing that you don't want to do, but will benefit you. Right? It's like sometimes you're tired and you don't want to read the word, but like it's gonna fill you.
Right.
You're gonna be filled if you consistently do it, but still yet you don't want to do it sometimes. Or maybe it's just me, I guess. But
it's absolutely right. In the 5 weeks you've been working out, there's been more than one occasion where you're like, I don't want to do this.
Yeah, I don't want to do it.
But you're dedicated to something, and I can tell you feel better about yourself.
That's right. I do.
And you feel like you look better, and you feel like you think better, and I can just tell you do look better. It's not just like a feeling. And so those things matter. I was talking to my brother about that recently. Like, sometimes when you look good, you feel good.
That's right.
And like, it's okay to like work on yourself.
That's right.
It's actually like necessary for our bodies, for us to be the temple of the Holy Spirit. We need to take control over our bodies.
Yes.
And the more I say no to my flesh, the stronger my will become.
That's right.
And and talking to Roger Jolly, and him telling me about reading 15 minutes in the Word a day will easily get you to where you can read the Bible in a year. I've started to implement that. I haven't been perfect. There's days I've missed, but I'm already through Genesis. I already read through Acts, and then now I'm starting from the beginning, and I've read through Genesis. And just getting little things, a little nugget here, a little nugget there, it's so, so important.
Yeah, and I think sometimes it doesn't have to be this like crazy stance. People are like, it's all or nothing, right? Like, it's like they do the extreme, so then they don't want to do the discipline.
Right.
And it's like sometimes it's just those little disciplines that really like build into the bigger, because you do kind of sometimes have to build that will of discipline, right? That consistency. It's like, do I want to work out as much as I am right now? No, but you know what? If I hadn't started getting in the stair climber like months ago, a couple days a week, I couldn't have got to where I'm doing now, 6 days a week, right?
That's right.
But it's like it had to start with the little step. It had to start with that 2 days a week to 3 days a week, to slowly building up, and it's kind of like when I've read through the Bible, it's so intimidating, the idea of like reading through the whole Bible, right? Like you look at it and I was like, oh my gosh, it's going to take me forever. It's going to take me forever to do it, but then whenever I did that 1 year and I just took a bite at a time and I slowly built that discipline, it got easier.
Yeah.
It became not something that I had to do. It became something I wanted to do, right? And I think that that's a statement for growing in relationship, right, with the Lord, right? Like sometimes it starts off with necessarily like, you don't necessarily want to do something, but the more you do it, the more you want to do it. It's like sometimes serving's that way too, sometimes, you don't always want to do it. But when you build that discipline, it's almost like it builds a desire sometimes. Sometimes discipline equals desire.
Yeah.
And I think that that's, super important. And when you become disciplined in things, like say serving, right? And you become disciplined, right? And you think about it, like we serve with the youth.
Right.
Right? So, and we're disciplined when we show up. But it's like, it's not just a discipline for us. It also becomes something for the children, right? Like they see us there. Right. So they start to see the discipline, right? It starts to show the fruit of like what it means to show up, right? So I think that there's a lot more that comes out of it. It's sometimes discipline's not just necessarily for you. Sometimes it's, your life's a testimony and you're showing the discipline so that maybe somebody else can do it. Maybe you cause a little inspiration or...
That's so good, because in thinking about serving and possible more serving and whatever the Lord has for us, it's so important that we both got on the same page in the serving aspect. You hear about husbands might be farther along than their wives, or wives being farther along than their husbands. It's so important wherever you're at, with whoever you're with, to set a discipline for yourself. They'll see that and it will inspire them. I've heard so many testimonies of women who led the men into freedom from addiction, freedom from whatever. And it's the same for the men. We have a responsibility as the head of our households to start being more disciplined with our families, because it will instill in us the ability to grow at a rate that we've never seen before.
That's right.
It's so important.
Love it.
I had another thought, and it totally just went out the window when you start talking about that, because I was thinking about something so similar to that. the other day, and it really just rang true when you said it to the people around you who you're setting an example for. You don't even see it. It takes me back to, Zach and I grew up together, Zach Stinson. And you don't realize how much you look up to that person or how much they look up to you. And yesterday was him being gone for 2 years, and I just think about all the impact he had on all the people.
Yeah, super impactful.
And, it's just another inspiration for me to continue to do that, to continue to live with him as a reminder of being a light to people. Was he always perfect? No. Were there times where, I wish people knew the Zach I knew, not the KC Zach, or not, I wish they, but even every season, everyone always knew he was going to love them and show them something that they had never experienced before, because he had Jesus inside of him.
That's right.
And so even in all of it, he was a huge impact to people. And, when we talk about being disciplined, like you were saying, it is important to start where it matters. Start with something that's reasonable.
Achievable.
Because my dad talks about it all the time whenever I get in and out of working out, because I've been so flaky with working out. But he says, get something consistent and don't burn yourself out. Too many people burn themselves out before they get consistent.
Yeah.
If you can get a routine built in your life, whatever it looks like, reading your word, I think 15 minutes is achievable, but whatever that looks like for you, it doesn't have to be all the way through the Bible. It can be a book and just focusing on it. It can be memorization.
Yes.
It can be whatever. But setting reasonable goals and achieving them will make you feel so much better about where you're at. And the Lord will show you and grow you in things that you didn't even see possible.
Yeah, it lights a fire. Because when you start achieving those goals, you're like, oh, I got that. I can do that. I think I can do more, right? I can do a little more. Like, I gave myself 15 minutes, and you make it through, and you're like, you know what? Genesis was good, but like, what does Exodus have for me? Right? So you just start to build. I mean,
man, I need to read another chapter real quick. This is really good.
Oh, man. I would do that when I read my 1-year Bible, because it broke it up. Right? And there would be times where it would be so good. Like, the Lord would just be speaking to me so much through the story that I'd be like, we about to be 3 days in. But that's how the Lord will do it, though. Like, he will work, and it wasn't every time, and sometimes it was hard, and sometimes you don't want to do it, but that consistent discipline and that built the desire so that, when I needed it, the Lord would speak to me. When I could have open ears, he would talk. And so it's important sometimes to be disciplined, because you don't always feel it, right? Like, you don't always want to do it. And I think that's, your flesh will do that, especially when your flesh is weaker. If you think about it, like on your most tired day, think about it when you're tired and you're hungry and you don't want to do something. Think about how much more you don't want to do it.
Right.
And I'm, when I got to work out, but like, I'm really tired or I have a headache, like, I don't want to do it more. But like, having that discipline of saying, like, I have a goal that I know I can achieve. I just have to push through it. I think it's so essential, because the more I've become disciplined in some areas, the easier it's become to become disciplined in others. And man, it's a game changer.
Your flesh will justify your sin and make it to where you don't even see it as a sin anymore. You'll get callous to it. And so just like we talk about being disciplined in our spiritual walk and even in our physical walk, if we continue to work out the same fleshly muscles, they're going to get pretty strong.
Yeah.
It's going to be pretty tough to not eat that extra whatever, drink that extra soda. It's going to be almost impossible. I set a goal for me to not eat past 7 o'clock, and there's sometimes where 7:30 rolls around and I'm snacky. I'm used to eating all the way up until bed. But what does that lead to? a life of just accepting everything that my flesh wants. It leads to sin. It leads to more and more egregious sin. It might start off as real simple, real easy, real small. But as someone who's dealt with alcohol and addiction in my life, I don't want to let that stuff seep in and allow a foothold for the enemy to lead me into worse things.
That's right.
And so it's so important that we get discipled, we get around like-minded people who you can look up to them and they can look up to you because they see you. The amount of times I am able to be honest with Garrett, he loves that. He needs that. And I need it too. So that honesty, I can really honor and respect him in it and him as a pastor of this church and look up to him as someone who's just slightly older than me as like an older brother style figure. And he can also see me being truthful and honest in his life and respect me and love me for that. And so we can sharpen each other. Our iron sharpens iron.
That's
and
right.
so, and the same thing for Jody with Leslie. Forming a relationship where it's not just about your needs and your flesh and he did this and he did that and gossip and the way the world normally twists everything into a negative. You guys can edify one another and edify your husbands, edify your family.
That's right.
And edify everything that's the Lord's doing in your lives.
Oh, man. I just love them.
Just finding people like that. Just finding people like that. It's not just them, but we mention them a bunch on here because we love you guys. But it's just finding people that even if we just go over there just to hang, we know we're going to talk about Jesus. Like, it's just going to be casual conversation at some point in the night. We might talk about, man, the Braves are, getting rained out, and then eventually I know it's going to open up into what we need to talk about. The Lord will give you people like that if you seek Him. If you seek Him.
That's right.
Because sometimes you seek the people first, and that's where you get tripped up. And you find people who sound good, and they might put on a face, but then as you get to know them, you realize they're not who they said they were. Mm-hmm. It's really important to seek Him, and He'll show you the ones who are pure and the ones that will have to the best of their abilities, your best interest in heart. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's super important to. Well, it's super important to seek the Lord first in all things because, He's our lead and our guide, and ultimately, I know we listened to this the other day. I don't remember if it was Pastor John or Pastor Jeff was telling us, people will fail you, right? You got to seek the Lord because eventually something will happen. Yeah. And people will fail you, right? Because we're not perfect. No one is perfect. And so, but as long as you're keeping your eyes on the Lord, He'll use and grow you in those relationships. And even in the imperfections, you'll still grow.
Right. Garrett was teaching about that.
Was it?
Yeah, I'm sure John mentioned it recently too, but I know when Garrett was talking about how we put people above Jesus and we lower Him down, he did mention that, he said, I'll fail John and John will fail me.
Yeah, that's right.
You know what I mean?
That's
and
right.
So, we'll fail each other. We've been married for a couple of years. We've been together for a long time. We've definitely failed each other a handful of times.
That's right.
You know what I mean? We're not perfect.
We're not perfect. But I do love the way that the Lord works in that. And, man, it's so important to keep your eyes on Him. That's why I think discipline's such a huge thing because it's so easy to be distracted. So easy. That's why I like the idea of discipline so much because even in the distractions, it's like a focus when you're disciplined, right? Even when you don't want to do things, but you're disciplined, it requires you to focus, because the world's so distracting.
I've had such a good example of that in my life with my father, and I just took it for granted. He's worked out basically every day of his life ever since I've been alive. Always in His Word, always praying fervently. I mean, just in every aspect of your life, a true walk with the Lord.
Incredibly disciplined.
It's so, but you have to do it for yourself.
Yeah.
And maybe it's the baby complex in me, but I was spoiled a little bit in some areas, and I didn't work on that enough growing up. But it's something that we all have to come to terms with in our own body, that we have to take discipline for ourselves. And set reasonable goals and expectations for yourself, something that you can achieve and check off of a list, just like we do with our yearly list. Write down a weight you want to get to and stay at, not just to get to it, to check it off the box, just to let yourself get back to whatever. Just set some goals and check it off, because when you do, you're accomplishing something. Your testimony is growing, and you're able to share that with others who might need to hear it from you.
Yeah, I mean, that's so true. Yeah.
You got anything else for the people?
I don't think so. I think that's...
The discipline is going to be a huge thing. We're going to be talking about that a bunch lately. I feel the Lord's going to be talking about discipline. I think it's so important. There's so many different ways to talk about it, so many different things that we can work on. I'm so excited for what the Lord has in store for us and for you guys. So with that, we're going to keep it short tonight. I'm just going to let the Lord lead me. You know, if the conversation warrants longer conversation, great. But if we can keep it at 35 and we don't need an hour, we're going to do 35.
Yeah.
So we love you guys.
Love you guys.
Thank you for tuning in. And we'll see you guys next time.